Good evening. We're going to call the regular Board of Education meeting for September to order. I'll start with the resuscitation of our vision statement. Every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. This evening, we're starting with remembrance of Chris Davis Sr. and Board Member Vandermeulen will lead us into that.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to ask for a moment of silence this evening for our district to recognize the passing of Chris Davis Sr., who was a 2007 Madison East graduate, a 2014 UW Whitewater graduate, and played on Whitewater's NCAA Division III men's basketball national championship team in 2012. Chris was both an educator and an assistant coach for 8 seasons at Madison East High School. He will be greatly missed. Chris's passing has taken a significant toll on so many in the East High School community, and we remember him tonight. Please join me in participating in a moment of silence in honor of Chris Davis Sr. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll now move into the public input portion of our agenda. There were 3 written statements submitted for this meeting. One in support of removing item 10.17, referendum 2024 owner's representative from the consent agenda until more information is provided. 2 in support of correcting the student services salary compression now, regardless of referendum passing. And we also have some folks who have registered this evening but do not wish to speak. I'll just quickly summarize what their registrations say. One is with the nurses group and want to support salary compression. Another is from group of nurses, also in support of nurses and the salary compression, putting it in the regular budget for the year. Another is also here for nurses and the student services team salary compression, including all nurses in the salary compression. And the last is also with a group of nurses here for and in support of salary compression. With that, we have 5 folks who have registered to speak tonight in person and 2 online, and we'll start with our online speakers. And for our online speakers, our public comments are for 3 minutes. And so if you do not hear the timer, we'll try to indicate to you that your time is coming to a close. Thank you.
Our first online speaker is Ryan Burton.
Yeah, I'm just here if there's any questions with our written statement in regard to item 10.17, our written statement that you referenced before, Chair. So just when that comes around, if there's any questions that need to be answered about our statement, I'm available for that.
Ryan, just to clarify, you don't necessarily, are you saying that you don't have public comments per se, that you're just letting us know that you're available if there were to be questions?
Yeah, I guess our public comment would have been in the written statement that you referenced earlier. Just wanted to make sure that a representative was available just in case there was follow-up questions to that statement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our final online speaker is Jordan Scholes.
Good evening, board. Similarly to Ryan, just making myself available for the written statement we had submitted, that Ryan had submitted. And again, just with regard to the 10.17, the consent agenda, just want to make ourselves available as members of the same firm.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Jordan, Ryan, just so you know, during public comment, we hear the public comments, but we don't typically use public comment to open up in a Q&A dialogue. But
Right.
we
Yeah,
appreciate that you're present.
just in case the item came up later in the meeting, we understand not at this moment, but later in the meeting if it does come up.
All right, our first speaker is Claire Schaefer, and then following Claire will be Chris Jimison or neither, and you may need to correct me, and then my apologies. For our speakers who are here in person, just as a reminder, public comment is 3 minutes. You'll have a clock up here. And at the podium, the little box on top of the podium, you'll see a green light. When you're down to about 30 seconds, it turns yellow. And then when you are at your time, it will turn red. If you're still finishing kind of your final sentence or thought, and try to do so within a few seconds of the 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, board members. Many people probably just assume recycling just happens in the cafeterias across our school district. In 2018, just a couple of schools in our district of 52 had cafeteria recycling programs in place. My name is Chris Jimison. I'm a geological engineer here in Madison, and I focus on solid waste management. I'm here with Consolidating tonight to request the Madison School Board to support a policy on carton recycling in the district cafeterias. I serve on the Resource Conservation Commission in Fitchburg. My son Miles started kindergarten in 2014 at Aldo Leopold Elementary School. While he was in first grade in 2015, I started to give presentations on waste reduction, recycling, and composting in Aldo Leopold Elementary School, along with other Fitchburg Resource Conservation Commission volunteers. We ended those presentations with a relay race between the classes on a particular grade level with items that could be characterized as either trash, recyclable, or compost. During that first grade year, I realized there was no recycling program in the cafeteria. I spent a couple of years gaining buy-in with students, parents, teachers, admin from Aldo Leopold to launch a cafeteria recycling program. In late 2017, I met with past MMSD Food and Nutrition Director, Steve Youngbauer, and he indicated that maybe 1 or 2 schools in the district had recycling programs in the cafeterias. In March of 2018, we launched a 2-day waste audit at Aldo Leopold, which is Madison's largest elementary school. We found that they were consistently producing 60 bags of trash per day from the cafeteria. And that was prior to the audit. After simply stacking the pay-per-use trays and recycling the milk cartons, we reduced the waste volume to 15 bags. This single finding inspired me to have the desire to roll this out across the district. At Aldo Leopold, this added up to a reduction of 8,000 bags of trash in a single year of school, which we celebrated during the 2018 and 2019 school year. Waste pickups to the school and a number of trash liners were also reduced. Most importantly, the students were empowered by this program at their school, taking the message to their homes across the community. We now have 17 schools with carton recycling programs in place, due in large part to several schools stepping forward, the partnership with Consolidating, and also the financial support of the Carton Council of North America. We're hoping that my son is a sophomore at Madison West. I'm hoping that we can get district-side. Wow, I'm done.
All right, I'm Claire Schaefer-Olekchek. I'm the Executive Director of Sustain. Chris came to us about 5 years ago and said, this is the work I've been doing. I need an organizational partner. And together we have worked at piloting carton recycling, as Chris said, across 17 schools. We've worked with custodians and teachers and admin, and most joyously, the children, watching them have the leadership, seeing their actions make a difference, and seeing them then go home and teach their families what they've learned has been incredible. This is a next generation of environmental stewards that we're talking about, starting with that first action they can take, the action they can see happening in their cafeteria. As Chris mentioned, though, this is not happening across all of the district. And we believe very strongly that we have gone as far as we can with piloting this work and with taking this work forward. And we now need support from you as the school board to incorporate this policy as part of your sustainability initiatives. This would include recycling in cafeterias as required. It would include standard operating procedure. And as we've shown over and over again, this is very streamlined. This is something that can happen, within a month to get moving, and something that we believe should be happening and is expected by the people of Madison. I have 2 children in the Madison School District, and one of their schools does recycle and one of them does not. So I personally, in my own family, know how different it can be. So in conclusion, we have a policy that we have pulled from Colorado as an example. We've also redrafted it in language that we feel may work well for MMSD. That's something we can follow up by emailing to you all, and we hope that that can be a jumping off point for you then to consider moving that forward. We have about 1 million milk cartons every school year that children are drinking from. That is 1 million milk cartons. Just think about this. That could go to landfill or could go and be recycled here actually locally in Wisconsin. So thank you very much for taking time and all the work you guys do. And we hope this can be an area you can incorporate into your other initiatives around sustainability and helping our students, see themselves as environmental stewards, and that we care about that as a community and that we value that being part of how we operate in our schools as well.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Tim Leman. And then following Tim will be Leland Pan.
I'm Tim Lehman, graduate of East High School. Thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate it. I'm a big fan of Madison Schools, and I'm in favor of the referendum for the teachers' salaries. I'm adamantly opposed to the referendum, facilities referendum. And I start by telling a joke. What's the best solution to climate change? Anybody got an answer? Turn up the air conditioning. Nobody's laughing, right? Nobody's laughing. 2 of the greatest tests of our children's lifetime and our grandchildren's lifetime are going to be climate change and our national debt. In my estimation, this particular referendum for the facilities is about air conditioning. I do not think, and I hope that this referendum fails, because I think we need to go back to the drawing board on what we need to do with our schools. If we undertake this effort, and we've already promised Shabazz a new high school when we gave the 4 high schools their work. Now we've got to build. Now we've got to tear down a perfectly good building, in my estimation. I'm a builder. I have a lot of experience there. And we're going to build a $103 million building for 100 students. Okay, putting that aside. So these two threats that we have are we undertake 5 rehabilitations in 2 new buildings. We have, according to facilities reports and that sort of thing, we have 33 more schools that are either C or D. That means that we're going to have to do all of those buildings, one in another tranche and another tranche and another tranche. This particular referendum doesn't cost $504 million. After P&G, principal and interest, it gets to $750 million. Are we going to be able to afford that every 6 or 8 years? I'm not. I'm a working class person. My taxes are already too high. We need to live within our means. These are the lessons we should be teaching our children. We don't buy things that we can't afford. We don't promise things that we can't deliver on. And climate change, anybody seen the pictures from Helene? I've got friends down in Carolina. It's like mayhem down there. This is the future. This is the future for our children. If we have a warm day at school, a couple warm days, let's go on a climate change field trip. I mean, let's innovate around these ideas about what we need to do to put our children's and our feet on the ground. We are virtue signaling here, and we're doing the exact opposite of what we should be doing for our children. Thank you for listening to me. I was mistreated at the last Toki meeting. I'm going to get to the bottom of that. If anybody wants to talk to me more about this, I have a lot more information that I think that you people should have. And again, I thank you for your service. You're doing a really good job. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Leland, and then following Leland will be our final speaker, Laurel Cornelius.
Hello there. I actually wrote my statement down because I want to talk about two issues and I don't want to waste your time. First and most importantly, I just wanted to thank the board for listening to our student services staff and pushing to address the unique pay scale compression that student services face and to include nurses who have been left out. You know, I think now about how much I owe my abilities to the veterans in this district, and advocating for this has been the least I can do to pay them back. If you think there's a financial capability of including this in all budget options, I would definitely encourage you to do so. Second, and I want to take off any potential hats you might think I wear, like MTI or as an educator, just as a resident, I want to address the proposed charter school pathway. This may surprise some folks, but right now I just want to say I have no issue with moving forward with asking for a full application so that we have all the information before making a decision on this. I have no stance for or against the proposal. That being said, I do have an opinion about an outside partner that its advocates have decided to invite in. And I speak now to encourage the Madison-based advocates for this, such as the McKinseys, to keep this in Madison and to reject outside influences that do not have our interests at heart and who take their money for their own objectives. So I speak mainly of the listed person on the proposal, Paul Vallis, who most recently ran for mayor of Chicago despite living in the suburbs on a campaign of racist dog whistles against the Black Chicago community with the support of the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police, who also endorsed Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. In 2001, Vallis was forced to resign as CEO of Chicago Public Schools after promising his promotion of charter schools in Chicago will lead to higher standardized test results. The opposite occurred. He removed Black educators under the guise of minimizing the teacher union strengths. It's no surprise he lost the mayoral race by losing in every Black region of Chicago. Vallis even went after homeless students in Chicago, violating their rights and refusing to enforce a settlement in their favor. He then went to Philadelphia and had similar results, but cost Philadelphia taxpayers $331 million by his debt agreements with Wall Street banks. He oversaw the total privatization of New Orleans public schools, taking advantage of the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. He was then fired from Bridgeport in less than 2 years. He even took advantage of the 2010 earthquake in Haiti to privatize Haiti schools as a white man. He is not a colleague, he's a colonizer. At best, Paul Vallis's politics are driven by a deep misunderstanding of racism and socioeconomic inequality as an out-of-touch rich man who has never spent real time in the shoes of those oppressed by our systems in the United States. At worst, he's a vulture who preys on the poor. Regardless, Pathway would find more success if it cut ties with him. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is Laurel, right?
Hi there, I'm Laurel Cornelius. I am the school nurse at Elvin Elementary School, and I'm also one of the nurse coaches in the district. So I'm here tonight to speak very briefly about salary compression. First, a big thank you. Thank you to Leland, actually, to MTI, to Dr. Gothard, to the board, and to everybody in the leadership that's really brought the conversation to where we are tonight, where you're looking at voting on a budget amendment to fix the salary compression issues. So I also want to particularly thank board member Vandermeulen, who really has advocated for nurses to be part of this conversation. As many of you may know, there's a part in the handbook that talks about everybody in student services and related service providers, and nurses are not listed there. And so that has led into discrepancy, not only in our nurses and their salary, but a discrepancy with nurses and our student service counterparts in pay. So that issue still needs to be addressed so that this isn't an issue going forward, but that's a conversation for another day. One thing I do want to mention is, because I understand that the vote is happening tonight, is that I don't believe that the budget that's captured in the agenda tonight actually has all of the nurses that need to have their salaries adjusted. So I just put that out in the room because it says before 2022, but we have nurses after 2022 that also would need to have their salaries adjusted. So I just say that with the hope that if the budget amendment does get approved, that regardless of what's written on paper right now, that people that are all impacted are part of that adjustment. And then also, I just want to say, like, I really hope that this, I'm just advocating for this to be approved regardless of the referendum. And I understand that like there isn't endless money within our budget, but I also, and like, I can't appreciate the competing priorities. Like if you say yes to this, you have to say no to something else. And so I want to acknowledge that, and that's a tough decision for you guys to be in. But I also want to say, like, I really hope the board recognizes that this is truly an issue of like fairness and justice, and that you will choose to include this in the budget that isn't dependent upon the referendum. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you to all of our speakers for taking the time to come here and to share your comments with us. I'm going to move us into the approval of minutes. I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting dated August 26, 2020.
Second, Maya.
Any corrections or comments to those minutes? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Laura, I see your thumbs up. Thank you. Oh, and Megan, sorry, I didn't see you on there. Your advisory vote?
Aye.
All right, that passes, Jesse. All right, for board presidents, announcements and reports, Vice President Pearson and I will share some good things to celebrate.
Okay, celebrating our staff. The Board of Education would like to congratulate MMSD art teacher Sonia Valle, whose paintings were selected to be part of the 2024 Madison Municipal Building Art Exhibition, Everything But the Dinosaur, Art with and About Youth. The Board of Education would also like to congratulate Carmelo Mello, is it Saiz? Yeah. On being named on Outstanding Educator by the Wisconsin Education Association Member Benefits. Mr. Saiz teaches at White Horse Elementary School and will be recognized at the Badger football game on October 5th. Congratulations, staff. Celebrating our community. MMSD proudly celebrates National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th. We recognize Hispanic and Latino Americans' important contributions and influence on history, culture, and achievements. This year's national theme is Pioneers of Change, Shaping the Future Together. Our schools are also celebrating this month, working to create thriving communities and centering the experiences of our students, staff, and families.
And for a few other acknowledgements in tonight's consent agenda, the board would like to acknowledge and thank all individuals and organizations that have donated to the district. Our large donations and grants tonight include $150,000 from the Roots and Wings Foundation to support mental health, $123,205 grant from the Wisconsin Department of Instruction for supporting our school-based mental health staff, $284,086 grant from DPI to fund fresh fruit and veggies twice a week at 14 MMSD schools, a $71,052 donation from the Madison Rotary to support the MSCR Goodman Rotary 50+ fitness program, and a $30,000 grant from DPI to support one of our transition programs benefiting students with disabilities. Thank you so much for the investments and continued support to MMSD. And now I will pass it on over to our superintendent, Dr. Gothard, for your celebrations and updates.
Thank you, President Nichols, members of the board. Great to be with you tonight. Let's talk a little bit about the start of the school year, because why not? Let's continue to really take in people, purpose, pride to see how we've started the 24-25 school year. Just some great updates. Some of these are repeat, but you know what? I think they bear repeating in some cases. First, just reflecting on the August 30th ribbon cutting ceremony that we held. You know, the 2020 referendum, I wasn't here, heard a lot about it, watched it from afar, but to be in our facilities with our community on that day of ribbon cutting at all those 4 high schools was truly incredible. I can't say enough to the people who were responsible for getting that done, and just continued thank you to all of you. I think it's making a big difference. In fact, I think the start of our school year in many ways is due to the construction being done and students and staff and families having access to just wonderful modernized school facilities at our 4 comprehensive high schools. In fact, the excitement from the community, I shared this story with some of you, maybe all of you, but at East High School, a gentleman who was a graduate from West High School approached me, and he was a 1954 graduate. He was an opponent to my dad, who was also a 54 graduate of Central High School. So of course we struck up conversation, but his story is that he raised his family near East. And it occurred to me after speaking with him that it was likely that there were 4 generations of Madisonians who were celebrating in the ribbon cutting on that day, which is pretty impressive to think about what it means, what a public school district means to a city and to a community. I think it's just one example about the incredible, meaningful day that we got to spend together, and what I'd like to think are going to be many more as we continue to work together. As a proud MMSD alum, it's days and celebrations like this that really excite me for our future, but also a chance for us to just embrace who we are as a city and as a community. You know, the start of the school year, also just the perfect weather, I will say, has certainly helped a lot. Yes, we've had some warm days, but we've had a lot of bright days too, which has just been great. You know, I've got to meet up with 2 former students who are now parents in the school district. And of course, I knew I'd have a lot of connections here, but it's one thing where you meet a 5-year-old who is the child of a student that you had in the hallways of our schools. Just really a lot of close circles with me, and again, makes me just so proud of our community. And got to spend those first days too with Deputy Secretary Cindy Martin, Mayor Sadia Rhodes Conway, and Governor Evers, also I know with Dr. McCray at some of our school visits as well. So just a wonderful way to begin the school year. Jesse, I think we have a slideshow to share as well. Let's see if I can do this on cue. Thank you so much to our communications staff and others who submitted photos. There's just nothing like capturing the emotion of a first day. So great job to all. Some other notable highlights from the last month. I joined the Downtown Rotary, which as a group I had been affiliated with previously, and it's really fun now to be a member, to have some great reconnections with our incredibly generous community. For those of you who don't know, it's the third largest Rotary in the country, over 400 members, nearing their pre-pandemic levels, which is really impressive. For a city our size to have that kind of involvement really says a lot. Also attended a Badger Rock community dinner where their new cafe is named in honor of Cora White, a great friend of South Madison and a friend of Badger Rock and a friend of mine. So it was wonderful to spend some time with Miss Cora. Attended several of our referendum 2024 sessions. Board members, thank you for being present there too. And of course, have to thank our staff who have put so much time into making sure that we're getting our message out to our community. Thank you all. Our Madison Public Schools Foundation board meeting was held, and again, a lot of new members, a lot of excitement. Tomorrow morning, we've got a breakfast kickoff over at La Follette High School, where a lot of new energy and excitement is going to be brought together for the start of this school year as well. And then finally presented to the Chamber Public Policy Committee, again, sharing with them both our vision for my vision for the school district, but also the important referendum that is coming in November. And second to last, I have to mention that last week, the state of education address was given by our state superintendent, Dr. Jill Underly, where Brian Kunzelman, one of our teachers of the year for the state, was honored last spring. He was also honored last week, and then was invited to a reception at the governor's residence that I was able to attend and meet his family. And again, just to be amongst that group of folks around the state and our elected officials, honoring one of our teachers, it was just a great day to be part of MMSD. So again, congratulations, Brian, and all of you for such a great start to our school year. Back on September 7th, which seems like already months ago, it was just a few weeks, we held and participated in and celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month a little bit early. I think it kicked off officially on the 15th, but Centro Hispano was able to host along with MMSD. And on that day, a lot of our resources were there, our groups from around the community that were there, and the power was celebrating Latinx voices. And I was able to address the group on that day. But the most powerful speaker for me was East High School senior Karina Kaspar, who I met last spring at a chamber event, and right away upon meeting her, knew that she possessed something that was very unique and special. Went on to follow her throughout the summer because we connected on LinkedIn, and she traveled the world, literally, internships and learning and leading. And to see her really take every opportunity she has to grow, she epitomizes what being an MMSD student is. And of course, celebrating her Hispanic heritage makes it even more special for her and her community. But she introduced me really talking about her experiences in MMSD. And not that they've been bad, but how they could be so much more, and recognizing her and embracing her cultural identity and making sure that her fellow students feel uplifted the way that she does because of the opportunities that she's had. And her words are really pushing me to think about what it means to be culturally responsive in all the work that we do in leading and teaching and supporting, in being a sponsor and an ally. It's just never more important today with all the political divide, the polarization that we have. We have to know who our children are, and we have to do the very best in bringing that out, leading them to become authentic individuals and really make the most of their opportunities. So again, one other quick highlight with cultural music and dance that day at Centro Hispano. I want to acknowledge the contributions. There was a trio of Los Americanos, includes middle school teachers Daniel Sanchez, a science teacher, John Redland, science teacher, Andrew Chrismer, a math teacher, and the second performance group was Cumbia Cajaca. I may be saying that wrong, Pachaca, and I apologize for that. With elementary music teacher Johan Galindo, middle school science teacher Pamela Mesa, and elementary bilingual resource teacher Marlene Patino Quinto. They met and connected with numerous members of the community. Special thanks to Centro Hispano leader for Dane County, Karen Menendez Collar, and Justice Castaneda. So again, I'm trying to pack a lot into what's been a really eventful and just an incredible start to our school year. I couldn't be more proud of our MMSD community for centering all of our efforts and our work on students and helping lift them to be the very best that they can be. Thank you.
So appreciate all of the updates on just getting the school year kicked off and also just where you've been in the community. Thank you for just being so present and boots on the ground, like out there to getting it done. Much appreciations. Right. I'm going to move us through our agenda then. So our next item is to report out on the items that proceeded through the instruction work group held on September 9th, 2024. And I'll pass that over to Chair Muldrow of the instruction work group.
Thank you so much, Board President Nichols. We were able to discuss two topics at our last instruction work group. So we spent a good amount of time deep diving our 2023-2024 academic results and got to hear, a lot from our staff in terms of what those results mean for us to move forward. We also got the initial application for a instrumentality charter school. And we'll be talking tonight about whether or not the board wants to move forward with a full application after reviewing that initial application. Coming up in the instruction work group, we'll be talking about co-curriculars with MSCR, early college, STEM Academy, and AVID investments, post-college and postgraduate data, as well as advanced coursework. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we're going to report on the items that proceeded through the operations work group held on September 16th, 2024. And the chair of the operations work group, board member Chair Crow, will report on that.
Thank you. So we had a packed agenda for this operations work group with 7 items. First of which we reviewed and accepted the collective bargaining agreement with our union partners. We reviewed the 2 budgets, which we will vote on this October. We discussed the summer school enrollment thing, and then we did salary compression, food and nutrition budget, the cash flow, and the referendum for the facilities. Our next work group will be October 14th, where we again will look at the 2 budgets we'll be voting on, take in the third Friday September count, have an HR update, a facilities update, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we did have one action item that proceeded through the instruction work group, as board member Muldrow said, from September 9th. And this action item is an initial charter application. So I'll read the motion. I move that the Board of Education, in response to an initial proposal from Pathway Career and College Academy, formally request a more detailed proposal based on feedback received during the instruction work group meeting on September 9th, 2024. Such detailed proposal would need to be submitted by December 1st, 2024.
Second, Maya Pearson, for the sake of discussion.
Okay, discussion? Oh, board member Muldrow.
Yeah, I want to thank the partners who made themselves available to that conversation or that initial application. I think after reviewing the initial application, that we need to engage in the process pretty thoroughly. And I think our community has a right to examine what's being proposed in its full application. And so for that reason, I'm going to support that we move forward with the full application. And I'm going to ask Dr. McCray to speak to what the process looks like and how our community will be invited to engage if we move forward with the full application.
Hi, thank you. So once the board decide that the full application would be extended to the organization to submit, the application would be submitted to the board via me, and we will submit that. Let me go back, I'm sorry. Between now and when the application is submitted, the administration will make themselves available for the organization to work through their proposal with to help them support it. Once the proposal is submitted, a review committee will then review that final proposal, provide feedback to the board as long as with the final application. During that time also, there will be a public hearing so that the public will be able to come and present and have their opinions, their thoughts, and their concerns to the board regarding that application. And then the board will then go forth and vote on the application after that public hearing.
Thank you so much. My, I guess, additional question related to how will be involved is in terms of generating that full proposal, that full application, we will work in collaboration, our administration will work in collaboration with the partners who are proposing the instrumentality charters, is my understanding?
Yes, so they have so many hours of consultation that they can have with anyone from teaching and learning, building services, anyone to help them to generate that final proposal to allow them to do that work with.
And I guess I have a question. If our administration says, we really want you all to scale this to a different size, we think that would be more effective. And they say, we don't want to take that advice. Is there a moment where our administration will have an opportunity to say, these are things we suggested, here's how they were responded to, here's where we may have some difficulty supporting this element and might want to adjust or consider other options? Particularly thinking about the size and scale, but also in consideration of duplicative services. So things we are already offering that don't necessarily allow for us to address needs that we haven't been able to.
So we act as consultants for the organization.
Okay.
We do provide them with going back and forth. Here's our feedback. Here's what we think. We also, what we do is, as we've done in the past, is once we have that final application, we as the committee, there's a rubric that we use. We provide feedback based upon the rubric, and we share that feedback with the organization as well as the board members, so you know what our feedback is as the consultant or as the administration. But we just act as that consultant, like just giving them our feedback back and forth, and it's up to them to decide how they want to use it or not.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think part of the information I'm really hoping to get from the full application are pretty sincere details around the location of this school, the capacity of the school, and kind of the intricacies of the programming being offered and how that is going to complement what we're already doing at MMSD and how that allows for us to really use an instrumentality to experience and strengthen our programming throughout the district.
And I think it's important to note, like, a lot of that is in a full application and the parameters of each section. So what you received was just a brief kind of like, here's what we thinking. But when they submit the full application, there's certain parameters for each section that state what they need to, that also is reflected in the rubric. So that would be feedback that we provide for them when we're going through and reviewing that final process, that final proposal.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCray.
Yes.
All right, any other questions or comments? Board Member Vandermeulen?
I would love to support this. I like the proposal. I think that we have not done enough for vocational rehabilitation. My reason for voting no tonight is one reason and one reason only. And that is the fact that if we decide not to go forward or disagree in a significant way, they can become a 2X charter. And it's my views on 2X charters, which are voucher schools in my mind. They are public schools according to DPI, but they cost our district money. And for that reason and that reason only, I cannot support it. Thank you.
Board Member Pearson.
Okay, thank you, Ali, for your questions. It made me think of something as well. So if the applicants decide not to or choose not to use the consultation hours through MMSD, they just submit what they choose to submit without utilizing the information, and then that just will come to us directly, right?
So what will come to you is the final proposal. Two things is going to come to you. The final proposal as they present it for you to make the decision that you want to make, as well as the committee's feedback as we went through and reviewed that proposal.
Mhm.
So you will get feedback from the committee says you're reviewing the proposal, saying, here's some gaps that we see that we've addressed, knowing that in the past with the consultant hours, we've gone back and forth with that application. So by the time you've seen it, it's the final, but we've seen it before, but we've given them some great feedback to say, here, you submitted your draft.
Mhm.
Here's some feedback for you. We hope that you would implement this feedback in the final that the board will receive. So you will receive from us the feedback that we provided to them with that final proposal.
Okay, that was the biggest question, is it, would we get the feedback from you all?
Correct.
And what your thoughts are, with going through the process, but then also my hope is that you can let us know if they choose not to use any of the information that we provided to.
And that will be in the feedback, right?
Okay.
So in the feedback, you will see, like, we made a suggestion that you do X, Y, and Z. So when you're reading that final proposal, you'll be able to say, the feedback was not incorporated. Here's the feedback that was given. Here's the final presentation. As board members, you'll receive that.
Okay.
President Nichols, Vice President Pearson, thank you, Dr. McCray. One thing to remember is that part of the administrative review is right now we have a very broad concept of what this could look like. But being an instrumentality, we have policies and procedures and practices for how we staff,
Mhm.
how we use our budget. So those are the kinds of things that we need to collaborate around.
Mhm.
And in the review that you get back from us, the recommendation from administration, all that has to be agreed upon. So that when you get the information, this is the concept that was proposed to us. Here is what it would look like to implement as an instrumentality.
Mhm.
And typically that's where, there's going to take a great deal of collaboration
Mhm.
to get to a place where all parties feel comfortable in presenting that or you eventually approving that.
Okay, thank you for that. My other question is, just around when we got the initial proposal, it did mention that the organization was also applying with UW-Madison. And I know that we had a conversation about it at our instruction work group. What was it? No, it was operations, one of those. We did have a discussion about that. If we choose tonight to move forward with an application to be submitted to the board, what are the regulations, I guess, in our state? Will they be able to also submit a actual application with UW-Madison at the same time?
So my understanding is that that's already been done.
Okay.
And so they're trying to weigh, I believe, both options of what is the best, while they've been very clear they do want to partner with us as a district. That is their priority. They did say that they had already was submitting to UW.
Okay, so they submitted an actual application, not just a proposal.
I'm not exactly sure what they submitted, so I'm not aware of their process. So I don't want to speak to what they have or haven't done. I only know like what they stated they've done thus far.
Are there any representatives from this proposal here tonight?
No.
No, any online? Okay. So that's probably one of my biggest questions too. If we do move forward with an application, or a review of an application, how that kind of configures with their application to UW-Madison and how that might have some conjunctures with our deciding as well. If we decide to go with it and then they get a better offer through UW-Madison, what happens? Does it fit like, so I'm thinking of all the more procedural things that can come with it. I guess I will say one comment, is that my concern, I will vote in favor of the application because I do think, as Board Member Ali mentioned earlier and alluded to, of how we are using our instrumentalities, especially when it comes to bolstering our programming in Madison. I think my biggest concern is one, where it may be placed, but also with the primary applicant who is submitting this. I do have concerns with that in general. And just as a school board, I think, well, as a school board member, I would say personally, I do have some concerns about that person. And so my hope is that we can get to a point where the proposal is strong. And if it is something that bolsters our programming, that great. But I just wanted to put that on record and as a comment.
All right. I will also just add that after a lot of thought, I'm willing to support them developing the fuller proposal. There were some concerns that I expressed the night of the instructional work group. One or two of the issues have already been named around kind of their genuine interest in being an instrumentality of the district when they had answered yes on the application about pursuing the route of becoming authorized through the university, and then knowing subsequently that they have submitted something already. So it's a little hard. They said in the room that they really want to be an instrumentality. And I don't think our initial application gives us enough detail to even know what that would fully look like, which is why I'm willing to vote in favor of it, of them working on a fuller proposal. I do think that I'll be looking for, and I'm sure this would happen through the consultation, a clear vision of kind of their instructional model and design for the school, and particularly how they're thinking they're going to recruit and or enroll students, from where. There was a lot in their initial proposal around kind of giving students direct opportunities through internships, mentorships with, kind of our business community, and really helping young people see kind of careers outside of what they may know in school. And so I'm hoping that they will be able to like build that out more and kind of develop that idea. And I'm gonna trust that the rubric that we use and the consultation that we use does help address any of the issues around how the school actually could function as an instrumentality of the district. So thank you. Did you want to make a comment? Okay.
Thanks.
Board member.
When I look at the policy, it says that going from the initial to the full application, it's 12 hours of consultation. So to me, I don't see any downside to inviting a more thorough proposal. It's in one way, it's a lot of time, and in another way, it seems like really worth finding out for 12 hours of staff time to see what we could do. So I'll be voting in favor of welcoming the full application.
All right. Oh, board member Castro.
Yeah, there are some reservations that I see in the application so far, but I think it would be I would like to see it further developed to see how it specifically can expand upon services within the district or opportunities within the district, and how the school philosophy fits with the MMSD framework and the values and principles that we're moving forward with.
Right, Megan, if you can hear us, since the motion has already been seconded and we're closing discussion, your advisory vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor? All right, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Laura, I see online. Those who oppose? 1. All right, thank you. That still passes. All right. We now have a couple of action items that proceeded through the operations work group held on September 16th, 2024. And the first one is a resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in the amount not to exceed $50 million. So I'm going to read the motion. I move that the Board of Education award the $50 million tax revenue anticipation note to the lowest bidder, TD Securities, at a total net interest cost of $1,288,777.78, a net interest rate of 2.84%. Thank you, Board Member Muldrow. All right, any discussion or questions? Yes, Board Member Muldrow.
Bob, I really appreciate getting the information about the interest rate. And I have to admit, I'm surprised that it's 2.8%, given what the market looks like at this moment. Can you kind of explain the standing the district has that allows for us to get a rate like that?
Sure. First, it's the market, and the bid went out this morning. It's competitive bid. I think two things really. The Federal Reserve cutting the interest rate was definitely in our favor in terms of timing. The district continues to be assigned the highest possible short-term rating, which is also makes us a seller of bonds in the market. We're going to work on a complete analysis of multiple years where we are at, but in context, the interest rate that we paid last year was 3.83%, and the year before was 3.31%. So the 2.84 is a significant savings, which is very positive news.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. We have the highest possible rating we could have for short-term borrowing. Is that the same for long-term borrowing?
They use different rating schedules. I can tell you we are going to have the same bond ratings for our normal operations as we did the year before, which is a very good rating.
Do we have the same potential this year to generate funding from this borrowing?
Yes, we will. And that's the work that we're going to do now that we know the interest rate, and the market will be able to update the table, and we'll provide that to the board.
Can you let me know when you plan on providing that information to the board?
We can get it pretty quick. I obviously want to share the work with Joe and the leadership team, but we should have that within a week.
Thank you so much. That's it for my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, I see 6 of us here and Laura online. Thank you, that passes. All right, next is the action item, the next action item that proceeded through the operations work group, which was the salary compression for student services. So I'm going to read the motion. I move that the Board of Education increase base wages for student services teachers, social workers, psychologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, school counselors, and speech and language clinicians and nurses to address salary compression issues in an amount not to exceed $1,900,000.
Second, Nikki Vandermeulen.
Right. Any questions or comments? Board Member Vandermeulen.
I want to thank you for addressing this amendment tonight. Salary compression, as we've all heard, is a huge issue, and has been a huge issue for quite some time. I think it's important that we added nurses, and I'm thrilled on that. I think it's important to know that what was stated before, and I hope that is still the case, that those who have become from a teacher to a psychologist are included in that bump. I think that's also an important thing. And most importantly, I'm glad that we're going to do this. I think we need to do it regardless of the referendum because what's right is right.
Pearson.
Thank you. So with the motion that we have currently, and just from my recollection of similar motions, to this, not seeing, I know that when we were briefed on this, not seeing any years attached to this, does that just mean that we're doing it across the board, not to exceed the 1.9 mil? And I just asked this question because we've heard tonight some public comments, and some of the written statements about, and we've received emails about, folks that may have gone or may have come to us between the 21, 22, school years and after that period that we had been briefed on. And so does this address everyone or just what we discussed in our work group?
Thanks for your question. Between the operations work group and tonight, we discovered that there were some folks who that were part of the student services group that should have been included. That's why the amount is larger. There were some teacher leaders who had job titles that weren't on the face of them recognizable as being part of student services, but we wanted to make sure that those were included. And we have also included staff who were hired before 2022. I looked at the list and it has people who were hired as recently as, especially for the nurses, that goes all the way back to folks who were hired in 1999 and before. So we did make sure that they were all included.
Okay, and so that would be for the full student services team plus our nurses.
Yes.
Before 2022 and not necessarily 23 and 24 are fine, is what you're saying. I just want to make sure I understand it.
If they needed to have an adjustment, they're going to be included in there because
bit.
there are some people who have moved from from a teacher position into student services. And I think there are a couple of those employees who need to be addressed who may have moved in 23, 24. So I don't want to say definitively
Okay.
there is no one,
But if there is some,
sure that everyone is included, that we've done all of our due diligence to include everyone and not excluded anyone.
okay, great, thank you. And the last thing is for my own curiosity, just to know, how do folks get notified that they are part of this adjustment so that our public knows and our staff know? Does it just like show up on their check?
No,
Or
no.
does it, do they get a
Send out-
letter?
We are going to send out each of them is impacted.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Muldrow?
Yeah, I want to thank our administration for the work they've done to help us get to this point and have this conversation really thoughtfully and strategically and inclusively. I do have a couple questions about kind of what this means for our budget in its entirety, right? We knew that the budget, we passed our preliminary budget, already had a structural deficit. I think that this would contribute to the structural deficit long term. I do think it's tempting to say that this is why we have fund balance. And I think it's important to remember that fund balance is one-time resources and that this is a recurring expense. Talk to me a little bit about how this shakes out.
Sure, that is correct. This would be base wage increase, so it's ongoing and builds to the structural deficit based on the operations work group and the conversations that were had that night. The plan is to put this amendment in both budgets, so it would be effective regardless of passage or non-passage of the referendum.
but it would add to the structural deficit. We're still going through all the numbers in terms of updating the budget amendments and starting to update some of the impacts based on the equalized value that's being released tomorrow. Actually, it was on the web today. And so our plan is to have an update at the October operations work group with the whole budgets and an estimated tax impact. But it is base building and it does increase the structural deficit.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. I think my hope in addressing that is that we prioritize compensating people with integrity going into our next budget, and that we really reconcile having a balanced budget. I am voting in favor of this tonight. I'm really grateful that we get to do this work, and I also think we need to be mindful of the long-term impact. The other question I wanted to ask to both of you is, how did we work in partnership with our union to arrive at this space? So how have we kind of made sure that our faculty, our staff are looped in, and how have we leveraged the voice of our union to do this work?
So thank you for your question. I actually it was pointed out by MTI that we had missed some teacher leaders. We've had several conversations with them about including the teachers who were our employees who were not impacted by this. And we still have ongoing conversations about this.
I really appreciate the responsiveness that it takes to acknowledge that our union is kind of pointing out, hey, this is where we've kind of missed a little bit of the mark, and the ability to adjust that in real time and be ready for this evening is tremendously meaningful. I also am really hopeful that we can have that kind of spirit of collaboration and willingness to listen to one another and be responsive long term. Because I think it goes a long way, especially when people have been advocating for something for a long time and are frustrated and demoralized by how hard it's been to kind of get in the room and make this conversation happen. And it couldn't have happened without you all being willing to create that bridge and work constructively with folks. This was a deeply nuanced process, and I think that the way we talk about it sometimes makes it seem simpler than it is. I do want to ask you all to break down how this might look very, very different for different people, meaning people who have more seniority, but less certifications or less education in any specific area may still see differences in their compensation. So this is not kind of everybody is going to land in the same exact space based solely on seniority. Can you talk a little bit about the indicators for someone's compensation beyond the amount of time they've worked for the district?
Sure. We still have lanes. So people who have a bachelor's degree have a salary lane. People who have a master's degree have a salary lane, and there's steps within those. Seniority was a factor, but just one of the factors that we looked at when we came up with this proposal. It was some of it was education, some of it was seniority. I don't know what else I want to say. Sorry.
I really appreciate kind of the different factors that have to be reconciled in this process, and really having an examination of our own process related to steps and lanes, as well as the different ways people achieve pay increases throughout the district. How many employees total does this $1.9 million reconcile their compensation for?
From the operations work group, there were 318 employees impacted, and we added approximately 20 more. I'm kind of hedging on that because I want to make sure that we have everybody, but it was approximately 20 more. So
I really appreciate the work that you've done to make sure approximately 138 employees will see an adjustment that reconciles their compensation. That's it. I'm sorry. 338. What did I say? My bad. 338 employees will see a reconciliation of their compensation because of the work you all have done. Thank you so much, Dr. Rother, for your leadership in this process. I think we as a board have wanted to have this conversation for a really long time. And I appreciate that it's one of the first things you've done in being here in our district is making sure that folks are being compensated fairly for their labor and their expertise and their experience. So that's it for me.
Yes, I have no questions, but I also wanted to just say thank you. I mean, our operations work group was just a couple of weeks ago. And we were given an amount of 1.7 million to kind of adjust the salary compression issues and to come back within a couple of weeks and to hear that you were able to, work with our teachers union to consider other employees who had not been included and to give us a not to exceed amount that's a little bit higher to make sure that you catch everyone is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much. Oh, Dr. Gothard?
President Nichols, I want to point out, it came up in some previous discussions. This is base building, so ongoing. Combination of Fund 10 and Fund 27, depending on, the different funding, the way that those positions are funded. But it's also important to point out that, and here I just lost my train of thought. There was one more piece, Bob, that we wanted to make sure that we covered.
From my perspective is important for the board to know we're going to work the amendment as part of both budgets. So it'll be effective in 24, 25, regardless of passage or non-passage of the operating referendum.
That was it right there. It, in effect.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that. Which is also, I feel like you really heard where many of the board members were at our operations work group. So that's just deep appreciation. All right. Seeing no other hands for comments or questions. Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All right. And all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. That's all of us with Laura online. Thank you. All right. We are into the consent agenda. I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all of the motions set forth in section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the September 30th, 2024 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his, her, or their affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated, hereby subject to any express separations that have been made by any member of the school board.
Second, Maya.
All right, are there any separations? Board Member Muldrow.
Yeah, I'd like to separate item 1021. I need to recuse myself. And then item 1024 for the sake of discussion.
Okay. Board Member Simkin online.
1017, please.
Okay.
Oh, there is one more. 1018. Thank you.
All right, Board Member Vandermeulen.
1018.
Okay. So I hear separations on 10.17, 10.18, 10.21, and 10.24.
I said 1021 and then
Yeah.
1024.
Okay. Then, Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. That passes with 7 of us. Let me go back to the separated items. All right, we'll start with 10.17. I move that the Board of Education contract with the Concord Group in the amount of $4,498,175.12 using funding from the Building Services budget to serve as the MMSD owner's representative for the Facilities Referendum 2024 project.
Second, Maya, for the sake of discussion.
All right, I see Board Member Simkin.
Yes, thank you. I asked to have this pulled because I'm looking for a little bit more information. What I see on the memo is that there was one vendor that came in under the price of the one that is being recommended. And I know we don't always go with the lowest bid, and that makes sense. What I'm wondering is what is the difference in services or the increase in services that we will receive by going with the vendor that is being recommended?
President Nichols, members of the board, first, I want to take this opportunity to introduce our new Senior Executive Director of Building and Operations, Scott Chiak. And he'll lead tonight's discussion with a little bit about the RFP process and why the information is before you tonight for your approval.
Hi, I'm Scott Chiak. Pleasure to be back in the district. I grew up here in Madison, an opportunity, Senate in La Follette. It's a pleasure to give back to the community, and thanks for having me tonight. Our comprehensive rubric started with understanding all the aspects of the RFP. RFP went out to multiple vendors, suppliers. The rubric came back very unbiased, cover the entirety.
Can you step forward?
How's this?
That's perfect.
Sorry about that. And it covered the entirety of the 2024 referendum rubric. Our companies were able to submit their proposals, and it covers multiple aspects, which is far different from the 2020 referendum. Given our rubric, the Concord Group was clearly a front runner, included the depth of the profile of the company, their experience to handle large, multifaceted aspects of the company, and the depth and strength of the company to perform the tasks that need to be tasked for in the 2024 referendum.
Thank you for that information. I'm wondering, is there any specific information you can share with us around services or capacity that led to this decision?
Given the memo that came out earlier today, the companies that came forward, Concord Group clearly had more depth of strength across the organization. They came prepared already with plans of how they plan to execute that plan, and also the depth of in-house group they had. Given the multifaceted of the organization, we felt that the strongest organization came forward, hence our decision.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, Board Member Vandermeulen.
Suggestion that we table the amendment till the next meeting where full information can be given, so that way a decision can be made with as much information as possible. Motion to amend.
So what additional information is a board member looking for? Because I do know that this is a big expense. And we also put many items in the district like this out to bid. Companies respond, and to some extent, we do have to have the administration go through the RFP process and score the contract. So if we were going to table it, what is the additional information that we're looking for?
Absolutely. Basically scope of services, what is going to be done, how it's going to be done, what can be. And some of it was in there, but I just didn't feel it was quite enough to understand it because I'm not a business person. I'm first to admit that. So I just think just a little more clarity, but that's up to the chair.
What is the timing of this decision relative to our work moving forward with the referendum?
So we are on a very tight timeline in terms of the referendum, and if a referendum is successful, our plan is to begin construction in spring of 2026. So as we discussed, our first work was on the owner's rep RFP. The next is bringing the month of October, the architectural RFP, followed in November with the construction management RFP, followed in early 2025, the abatement RFP. And withholding or delaying the project at this time puts at risk us beginning construction in the spring of 2026. The memo asked for, as did the RFP, we would like to begin work for the next month in anticipation of the work, which the way the proposal is laid out, we would work the month of October with the owner's rep to help us prepare the construction management RFP and review the A&E RFP. So the owner's rep is a critical extension of building services staff and budget planning and accounting once the project gets underway. And so we put a footnote in the additional memorandum for additional information provided to you all as per the RFP. We don't make public the request or the rubric scales until after the recommendation and contract is signed, because obviously it's about negotiation and the contract. So we do have the proposals and we can talk about how we can share that moving forward with board members. I'd want to spend some time talking to Monica and the team how that is, but yeah, I think that answers it.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to make sure I say what I think I heard you say, and then check in with Board Member Vandermeulen. So the owner's rep is one of 4 big items that are connected to us being able to actually break ground in spring of 2026. So the owner's rep becomes kind of like the project management firm handling all of the architecture renderings, the construction, the demolition, the blueprints, all of that, or am I misspeaking?
No, that is correct. So the owner's rep, think of the owner's rep as an extension of the Madison Metropolitan School District Administration and Building Services. They'll help manage the architect contract. They'll help manage the construction managers. They'll help manage all the work for the project, including review, including cost overruns, including analysis, design approvals. They bring the depth and breadth that we don't have in the district today.
Okay, great. So this is of one action that you're looking for the board to take in terms of timing, Board Member Vandermeulen. And then coming next will be another series of these kinds of decisions over the next few months. So if there's a set of questions that you want answered while they're here.
In my motion,
Okay,
because I did not realize how tight that timeline was.
okay. All right, I'm going to go with Board Member Muldrow and then come back to President Pearson.
Yeah, I think one of the things I want to ensure that we do when we go out to bid is that we strengthen our own process, that we navigate our own process with integrity and consistency. And so I think it's really important that if we're going to ask our administration to go out to bid, that we engage in that process really thoughtfully, but also really consistently. Like, we don't want to treat some vendors very, very differently than others. I do want to ask just about that process of going to bid and how we ensure that the bids are competitive. And so with kind of projects that have this large of an investment, oftentimes communities generate international interest, see bids from around the world and across the country. What are we doing to ensure that we're getting the most competitive bids and that we have a wide and diverse range of opportunities to explore our options?
Sure. We have a pretty well-established request for proposal process where it's put out, it's public for a certain number of weeks. There's also part of the process where if there are any questions from the vendors, we take all those questions and then answer all those questions at the same time and send that out to any of the bidders in terms of the process. It's, I think, a very open process. The proposals are all laid out specifically what we're asking and how we will be grading in terms of the major areas of the RFP. And then the second part is when all the proposals come in, we apply that rubric and then we invite the highest performers to an oral interview where we ask additional questions, which is the process we use for the owner's rep RFP.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. I have been aware of this process as facilitated by the city related to very large scale projects. And the city seems to gain more international interest than the school district. Is there anything that we should be looking to the city for support around in terms of generating greater interest internationally or ensuring that we have the most competitive bids in the future?
Yeah, excuse me. We'd be more than happy to reach out and cross collaborate on what may be possible for future referendums.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's it for my questions.
Okay, Vice President Pearson, and then I'll come back to board member Bolton.
Yeah, thank you. My only question is, and I'm not sure if you're able to speak to it tonight, is just what's the next part of the process? So this is one piece. You'll come to us with some other pieces related to the referenda and trying to make sure that we're getting all our ducks in a row. So what's the, I guess, process for the next pieces that will be coming to us so we can kind of like foreshadow it?
So currently we're working on discussions for the AE, architectural engineering.
Mhm.
That RFP will be coming out shortly, actually kicked off today, I believe it did. So that's the next phase of the project. We're continuing it on for the next construction side and also that as well. So there's a lot of continual background work in our organization every day to make sure we're staying on target and giving time for the community and our other partners to give information back to us.
Okay, so all these RFPs are happening at the same time, kind of, or almost simultaneously?
Yeah, they're happening
Given.
phased approach, but they're always work on the next one coming forward to make sure we're not losing ground on the tasks that come forward to us.
And I think it's important too, Vice President, to point out that, again, some of you have seen the dream board process we're going through. Let's scheme, that's ideas. I mean, once we get approval or authority to do this, we've got to narrow down and get some actual project designs out as well. And these firms will help us do that as well. We don't have the internal staffing to do that.
Right.
And, so, and let's just say that we're not successful, these firms too will kind of help us regroup and understand what could a different proposal look like as well. So these are important, partners that we're going to have regardless, because we have a facilities condition report that says we need to address our aging facilities.
Okay. So this will go in effect if the referendum passes or regardless? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
The owner's rep has different phases. So if approved tonight, we'll negotiate a contract for the work for the next month, which is the
October.
under $30,000 amount. And then all the proposals have a provision if there's not passage of the facilities referendum, the contracts are done. And we pay them for the work in terms of owner's rep for the month of October that they'll be working.
Anything you see in the writing that says pre-referendum, that's what that refers to.
Got it.
That's work that takes place with us in preparation for and up until the vote.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's fine. That's it for my questions. Thank you.
Board Member Mo.
First, I was under the impression that that Concord Group is an international firm.
I'm sorry?
I think the Concord Group is an international firm. It's what I understand. For me, it's neither here nor there in terms of, approving or not approving the consent agenda item. When I look at the memo that you sent today that lays out the scope of the owner's representative services includes pre-referendum services, schematic design services, design development services, construction document services, assistance with bidding processes, construction phase services, moving services, close out of the project, warranty period services, general project assistance. In which of those 10 places, or if not in there, where is the type of work that is about broad community engagement, and how this what would be historic changes to the city schools would be engaged with stakeholders broadly, not just towards what are the schools going to look like, but how do we think about this in terms of Madison's history and how Madison looks? Is that something, for me, that's an important question, because I think it would be a real shame to miss opportunities here. So in those 10 sections, is one of those covering that, or does that happen somewhere else within MMSD's staffing?
So a lot of the stuff we talked, it's a great question. And early on in the design phase, there's some feedback from this administrative group, also the community aspects of, are these hitting the targets that need to be done? And that's part of that question that comes up to our owner's rep.
That's design development services?
Yes. And also construction document services as well. It's making sure we have the right facility for the environment and the land around our organization and our students.
Okay. Okay. I think I still, in general, feel nervous that we're gonna miss openings that won't show up again. I still feel nervous about that, but hopefully I have many years to see it out.
Just to clarify, as Dr. Gothard mentioned, we're finishing up our phase 3 public sessions, and a critical part of this, working with our owner's rep who will be helping us lead these conversations. Once the sites are chosen of what's going to come first in spring of 2026, the owner's rep will be staffing and assisting us in the meetings with the specific school communities that are impacted, including the teachers and the parents, to say, this is a general design. What is unique and specific to the school that you want here? That's a critical part of our plan, and we have been talking about that as part of our implementation from the very beginning.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and call the question. Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
6. Okay. And Laura, I see you. So that passes 7-0. Thank you. All right. Our next separated item is 10.18. So let me read the motion. I move that the Board of Education accept a grant in the amount of $30,000 for the 2024-2025 school year from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction Transition Readiness Grant to fund tuition support and textbooks for Campus Connect students.
I pulled this out.
Second,
I need a second.
Maya.
Okay, thank you. All right, Board Member Vandermeulen.
Sorry about that. I pulled this out as a thank you because Campus Connect and transition are things that are very close to my heart because it helps individuals with disabilities reach their potential once they leave the school building. So I want to thank them and I want to thank DPI for this grant because transition is something that isn't always listened to and it isn't always followed through. So I'm really thrilled that this happened. So thank you again.
All right, thank you. Megan, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All right, all favor? Aye. All right, that passes. All right, our next item is 10.21. I move that the Board of Education accept a donation of $150,000 from the Roots and Wings Foundation to support mental health needs among MMSD students for the 2024-25 school year.
Second, Maya.
All right, and there wasn't any, was there discussion on this one? Board Member Castro?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Roots and Wings for making a really generous donation to support student mental health in the district. Seems like we learn more and more about how mental health impacts learning and whole student well-being. So I just really wanted to thank them for this nice donation.
Thank you. Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Recuse? All right, one recusal. Thank you. All right, and the next item is 10.24. I move that the Board of Education approve the September 2024 Human Resources Transactions Report, item 1 through 141.
Second.
Thank you. Board Member Muldrow.
Yeah, I pulled this item because I wanted to highlight that I think this year we've seen significant progress in starting the school year strong. I think there's more work to do, but I do want to celebrate that. And I have a few questions that I'd like to direct at HR and Dr. TJ McCray. As you all were able to speak to these questions during my board briefing. And I think they're things I'd like to highlight for our community. So my first question is, how many of our schools currently, as of today, have 3 or more teaching vacancies?
Sorry, I didn't have it. I didn't bring an answer to that question because I answered how many schools are fully staffed, and we have 27 out of 52 of our schools are fully staffed.
I think it's really exciting. I think that's the first time in a very long time at the beginning of the year that the majority of our schools are fully staffed. I do think it's important, and I don't want to inaccurately represent this. So Dr. McCray, if you have this information, it'd be great for you to come up and help fill in. But at board briefings, what I was told is that we have 3 schools that have 3 or more vacancies, meaning of the schools that have vacancies, the vast majority of them have 1 or 2 vacancies. Is that?
I was trying to get this information today, but our data dashboard did not update since last Thursday.
Okay.
So Dr. McCray, I don't know if you're able to look at the dashboard. Okay, thank you.
Let him work on it for
Okay.
a couple seconds. I want to ask a little bit about what was done to allow us to start in a very different place this year in comparison to prior years.
I think that it was a combined effort of like everyone in the district, and I have the associate superintendents, everyone on the senior executive leadership team, like really pulled together to make this happen and help with human resources doing like what we're supposed to do, and asking principals to finish up those references and doing all of those little things that sometimes get lost. Like we were really focused on that and knew that those were the things, those little things that really got us over the finish line this year.
I am really grateful for that. In terms of the vacancies that continue to be open, what is our approach to resolving those vacancies and making sure that all of our schools are fully staffed? And do we have kind of specific goals in terms of our timeline? Are we hoping to have all of our schools fully staffed?
Yes.
At the end of this first quarter, by the end of this first semester? I have looked at data sets over the last 3 years that actually look like we lose more people than we gain throughout the year, that we end with fewer teachers and more vacancies.
And every point of data that we talk about is always like a moment in time, so today, looking at what really was Thursday's data, it shows 25.3 FTE for teachers. We would like to have that be 0. We are still going to job fairs. There are Whitewater is having a job fair on Wednesday, so we are still trying to get that. We can certainly try to get that. Trying to think when first quarter ends, but we certainly would like to have that number be 0 by the end of first semester and really work on the retention of our students and have that, be the full district effort, the professional development, the compensation, all those things. Having more subs this year, having vaccine clinics in the schools so that we can have our staff be healthy. I think nothing is like huge and earth shattering, but each one of those things is a lever that we can use to continue to support our staff.
Thank you so much for all of that work. I am hoping that this year looks really different in comparison to other years in terms of staffing. It's really nice to know that we have a more robust subpool and that we have fewer vacancies. And I think it's deeply meaningful to families and parents. I do want to acknowledge that not just our teaching vacancies, but vacancies across every area of the district's employment has an impact on our budget. And as we are getting into the school year, those vacancies represent a cost savings that is being generated. And so I am hoping that we fill all those vacancies. However, if we do not, I'm hoping we're able to update ourselves in real time about what that means in terms of our budget and the implications of having those vacancies long-term. That is it for my questions. Thank you so much for the work that you've done to do this. The last comment I want to make in relationship is that as we're filling our vacancies, as we're bringing people into this district, I think there's an incredible opportunity to diversify our staffing and to make sure that all of our young people have an educator at some point in their education who shares their identity. I went to school at MMSD for 12 years. Never once did I have a Black teacher. I think we have the opportunity in this moment to make sure that that is not a persistent truth for our young people. And I am curious about what your approach, Dr. Gother, is to ensuring the diversity of our staff, particularly.
Yeah, it's a great question. President Nichols, Board Member Muldrow, I think this is a shared value that we have and certainly don't profess to have all the answers. We need to get working with our community in a new and better way as well to understand where assets are in our community. 3 efforts right now that I'll point to is some of our Grow Your Own programs are, my experience in MMSD is Grow Your Own was always kind of something that was used, but there was never a formal program with a college or university that we have now. So the fact that we're able to put some real support into making sure that this is something that we see through and that it really does provide, an opportunity for staff who are identified in MMSD, many who live and grew up just like you and I right here, that really have an opportunity to move up and advance through our school district. So we're doing that with educational assistants. We're doing that with professional staff who want to get their admin license. And I think it's just, as we're able to demonstrate success with that, I think our community should take note of that. And I think others are interested in funding and supporting those efforts as well in areas that we want to grow and expand. Beyond that, I'm really interested in our teacher pathway that we're looking at our high school students right now and providing them pre-education courses and looking for status either at a four-year university or through Madison College. The programs that they have really provide a lot of different entry points to teaching that didn't exist, 5, 10, 30 years ago. So I'm excited about some of those opportunities, but most importantly, we also need to just, share that and bring some joy and teaching in and of itself. It's been a difficult 5 years. The rhetoric around being a teacher, being in public education is one that I think we have a big role in changing by the way that we lead, by the way that we show up, by the way that we support decisions that we make. And we want Madison MMSD to be a destination school district. And the only way we'll accomplish that is if we attract and keep the very best. And our very best need to represent our students. They just do. So you have my commitment to that. That doesn't mean that I have the answers, but I certainly have the same values that I think you all hold in how we can do this in a better way.
I greatly appreciate your response. And part of what I appreciate your response is that we get to do this work together and in partnership. And I think it takes humility to admit that this work is tremendously challenging and that there isn't a silver bullet. But we do have some great steps forward in terms of cultivating the leadership that is educators within our own students. The other thing I want to acknowledge, Jennifer, is that it would be really easy to think of the work of filling vacancies as kind of a stagnant reality. Like we're just asking to replace who we lost last year, but that's actually never true. We're always asking you to find more people every single year. And whether that is making sure our class sizes are small at the early elementary levels or staffing village builders, we're asking for more work year after year, and doing that work means that our young people get smaller class sizes and get the supports that they need and have the reading interventionalists and the cross-categorical educators and the teachers who speak multiple languages that they really, really need. And so this work is tremendously important to me and our young people and our families. And I'm so grateful that we were able to make this kind of progress and start this strong this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, thank you, Laura. All right, that passes. All right, we will now move on to other reports to the board. Starting with City County Schools Collaborative Committee. We were not able to hold a meeting in the month of September, and our next meeting is October 9th. Student Senate.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. As you can see on your board docs, we had 2 meetings in this past month. I'm just going to emphasize a couple high points that we had just really quick. So first, we have a new advisor, Mr. Corey Foster from East, and he is doing an amazing job. We are so happy to be working with him, and we are continuing with Mr. Martin Moe, who is also amazing. And he has been working with us for a couple of years now. So our first meeting was on September 11th, and our second was on September 25th. In those 2 meetings, students voted on what the committees are going to be for this coming year. So we have one committee that is dedicated to student opportunity and leadership, so really highlighting different opportunities for students of all backgrounds throughout Madison and ensuring that there is like one space and one place that students can look for a compilation of all of that information for students. And then the second is mental health. Students also expressed a lot of interest in how substance abuse can tie into that and what resources the district can give to students that are struggling with substance abuse. We also went over public comment, like 101. They were actually able to go into the OD and see the equipment that you all use. They were able to write practice public comments. And so they were able to see kind of how to do that in the process for that. We went over literacy. They wrote some individual reflections. So some of that information will be shared with you come November for the instruction work group in conjunction with Cindy Green. Officers have been selected and they will have their orientation this Wednesday. Special thank you to Ollie Muldrow for coming to our first meeting. It was amazing. Thank you so much. I know the students really appreciate it. And Dr. Gothard, thank you for being willing to come to one of our meetings in October. We also had all 4 comprehensive high schools represented at our meetings, which is amazing. Very strong start to the school year. And I know the president, Claire Lee, and I will be doing a lot of work to ensure that momentum keeps coming. And then last but not least, on October 28th, Student Senate will actually have a presence at the regular Board of Education meeting. They will be able to do public comment. They will be able to sit there and watch, but just to have a group of youth that will be there and be able to support each other while they're in that space. So we encourage any student in MMSD to come regardless of if you're affiliated with Student Senate or not. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, Megan. Next, we're going to have Madison School and Community Recreation Advisory Committee Board Member Mosner Feltham.
Thank you. The MSCR Advisory met September 19th. 13,241 people are enrolled in MSCR fall programs. Middle school sports are underway with more teams participating than ever before. That's 17 middle school volleyball teams, 13 middle school soccer teams, and 11 middle school cross-country teams. In October, MSCR will be celebrating Active Aging Month, with over 35 free programs and activities for community members over age 50 to try something new, have fun, and keep their brains and bodies healthy.
Thank you. Anything from Policy Committee?
We had a we had a meeting with Neola, an in-person meeting where we discussed some of the policies that we can go through, what ones we need to work on, and just getting, and our goal Mike came up with is to get a calendar of when we can and what policies can be handled when.
All right, no report this month from board governance. All right, there's no other old or new business. Yes, so we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor? All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.